Hey folks, Quilly18 here, and the internet is abuzz with RIMWORLD news because yesterday Tynan announced the upcoming update 1.3, which is actually already available as a preview on Steam, plus the ideology expansion, which I don't believe has a release date yet, but we're getting more RIMWORLD content, which is great. I remember when RIMWORLD 1.0 dropped, there was the belief that, well, maybe that was going to be the end of sort of RIMWORLD active development, but hey, at least we've got mods. And then here we are, we're at 1.3, with our second major expansion on the way. Royalty, of course, was the first one, and now we've got Ideology. Now, the 1.3 expansion is adding tons of stuff to the game. And again, you can play it right now. There's instructions here. I will link link this announcement down below in the doobly-doo if you want to go and click on that. But yeah, you can access the beta to it on Steam. You know, the idea to releasing it as early as possible is to find bugs, but also let mod developers try to update their mods to be 1.3 compatible as quickly as possible. There's going to be lots of changes. There's a few notes over here. We've also got sort of a complete list of changes in this file here, which we'll be going through in a second. But yeah, 15 months of improvements in 1.3. One of the big things here is pens and fences systems for animals. So our animals, we can now go and put them in proper like pens. We get these like western town looking areas, which just looks absolutely fantastic. I think it looks really cool. Egg boxes have been adding in here, and you can see that your colonists will be leading your animals to the pens on a lead, which is really cool. Oh, I thought that opened a new window, but apparently it just moved forward over here with these guys. Let me go and open a few of these images and tabs so we can take a look at them. Oh, right. So the other thing right here, the faction Goodwill. So actually, we should talk about the search bars have been added everywhere. So a few things that have been added in this 1.3 update are things that we used to have mods for, but now been incorporated into the base game. For example, a little search window over here. So if you want to find, for example, a fence, you could just type it in the little search box and find yourself some fences over here that you could go and build up, which is really cool. One of the things that's mentioned in one of the documents that is a change that I absolutely love because it's something I really relied on mods for, is now when you've got your recruited colonists selected, you can right click and drag them in a line behind cover or something like that. This, I used to use a mod to enable this because it was great. You'd put up your sandbags and then you could, because normally when you click, the people sort of show up in a weird convoluted mess. You didn't have a lot of control as to where they got placed. You would have to do a lot of individual placement, but being able to sort of drag them behind cover like that is absolutely fantastic. Love to see it in the base game. The other thing is we got beards now. Beards have been added to the ability for your, see, the cosmetics for your pawns. And there's also been an update to how the pawn graphics get generated, so to actually speed things up fairly considerably, which is nice to see. What else? Okay, faction Goodwill system has been reworked, so neighbors keep a record of what you've done and why they feel that way about you. So we'll have a better idea as to why they hate us, which is nice to see, and we can see that in the pop-up example over here. So this faction, for an example, doesn't like you, and why? Well, they've got this, natural enemy, but then if there's other modifiers, you'll see them start to slide in over there. The speed at which they revert back to the their neutral, their sort of natural goodwill level has been increased as well. So I think I like more feedback there because it was a little bit difficult to really necessarily know everything that you could do to modify the faction goodwill if you want to play diplomatically or not. So it's nice to get more feedback over there. Enemies with new breach style raid, hooray! That's what we wanted, more competent enemies. So yeah, they've got new tools for going through the various walls and things like that. There's the drag move formation, which is really good. You can order a fighter pick up a down person to carry them wherever you wish using the normal move controls. No more harrowing and unnecessary rescues directly to bed. So I guess once you pick up a person, you can drop them anywhere. It's not just locked into, we've got to drag them to a bed. So it might be a little easier to move someone just a little bit behind cover and then restart the combat. Now carry medicine in their inventory, use it directly on the battlefield. Again, this is something that we used to use a mod to do. That was really good, and it's nice to see that get brought into the base game so that we just get more consistency. Beards! Yep, beards are good. There's the more efficient render system. And yeah, they've always been really good about communicating with modders, supporting modders well. And yeah, so better support for modding in here. Okay, and then we've got the ideology expansion altogether. So that's 1.3. There's also a document that is... Oh, that's not the tab I want. Nor that, nor that. There you go. This document over here that's got even more details for 1.3 that we can take a look at in just a scooch. But the ideology expansion. So yeah, RimWorld's always been about role-playing, that's true, and this is entirely true, right? We've seen players, we've done that in our Let's Plays. With all my Let's Plays, I try to often come up with a particular theme, some sort of angle for it. So you can see players create colonies with their own special themes. Minimalist nomads, raiding pirates, mad cannibals, drug worshippers, etc., etc. And so what's going to happen here is, yeah, what if you made a system that lets players express those different ways of life more explicitly, right? So you create a belief system and then act it out on the colony. Belief system, you can play as tree-worshipping cannibals, da-da-da-da-da. And if we get a little bit of an example from this tab, we can see these belief systems over here and all these traits you can grab. Memes. Flesh purity, I guess these are people who would not like the... they don't want cybernetics, for example. Wow, these people are... That would be a pretty nasty group of people. Are they wearing, like, human skin masks? What? And look at the keeping people in cages and things like that. Yeah, so this is going to let us, rather than you know, we are going to try to enforce our own role-playing and sometimes having to fight the system to do it, now we can have the system support the type of role-playing we're looking to accomplish. I also really like the screenshot here. It's sort of, I don't know, the look of this is really, really quite different. I feel like a few of these things, both in 1.3 and now with ideology, reminds me of a few things from like Dwarf Fortress. Of course, have always been a great, huge inspiration for RimWorld, which is great. I mean, RimWorld is basically just Dwarf Fortress, but considerably more playable. Yeah, ideology makes your story into more story, your story more than ever before. Comes a bunch of extra content, whole new quest category, presents a sort of Indiana Jones roguelike challenge of breaking into ancient structures and facing unknown dangers inside to get ancient treasure. And again, we've got some really great looking screenshots of bases over here that look considerably different. So clearly there's a lot more objects that didn't exist before, but also just a lot of creativity being shown by the developers in terms of the bases they like to do. I like this one here. Very natural cave dwelling. Again, gives me a huge kind of RimWorld, sorry, Dwarf Fortressy kind of vibe. Whole thing's super moddable. Modders tested ideology. So again, they've been in contact with the modders and working with them to make this system, you know, work with mods, which is really, really just fantastic. New dried creatures, symbiotic relationship with special trees. I mean, there's so much stuff going on. Okay, let's take a quick look-see at the public changelog. So this is going to be updated constantly, right? So this 1.3 build that is available as a beta on Steam, you can play it now, but it's going to get pretty frequent updates. I remember with 1.2, the updates were coming pretty often, and the systems were, like, they're not afraid to, like, completely change, rip out, introduce completely new systems throughout the beta over here. So expect it to be fairly in flux. So yeah, we get this pen system, create pens for your farm animals, keep them organized and safe, which I love. There's also a note somewhere in here about raiders are more likely to ignore neutral animals. So we've certainly had that problem before, right? Where a raid shows up and it happens to show up on the side where we keep our animals, and then they just slaughter all our animals. Which, I mean, if the goal of the raiders was simply to hurt the colony, that's a good way to do it. But generally speaking, the raiders are there to, like, take stuff, right? To improve themselves. They want to take things from us. So just willy-nilly slaughtering animals instead of focusing on killing colonists, stealing loot and things like that doesn't make as much sense. So that's hopefully going to make our animals a little less fragile, which is good. Because it always felt like a little arbitrary, right? They just show up on the wrong side and boom, all our animals are dead. Like, oh, come on. Let's see, egg boxes. Again, it gives me big Dwarf Fortress vibes, but yeah, tame egg-laying creatures will lay inside boxes, and eggs can be used for food. Haulers will automatically empty the box when it's full. Really great. Straw matting. I did notice that when I popped open the game over here and went into my flooring. Yeah, we got straw matting over here to use in animal barns, which will look potentially really cool. Filth is produced 95% less on this floor, which makes it useful in barns with messy animals. Since animal filth has been reworked, animals should be kept in barns to prevent unnecessary filth in colonist buildings. I assume the straw matting isn't particularly beautiful, so you're not going to want to use it indoors for, like, you know, cheap, low filth kind of production. Although, I don't know, maybe in the early game it's viable. I don't know. Auto slaughter system. Players can select species of animals to keep, and the rest will automatically be slaughtered. Now, I wonder, I haven't actually noticed where that gets controlled. Manage auto slaughter. I was gonna say, can you set numbers? Perfect. So one of my favorite mods is the Colony Manager mod, and it's used for a couple different things, right? It's used for, well, when say, a reserve of wood gets too low, go out and start, chopping some trees and try to keep, I don't know, 500 units of wood in there. And that's pretty good. But one of the big things that I always loved it for is the ability to auto butcher animals, right? So you're keeping pigs around, and you want to say something like, keep 2 males, 5 females, and then anything beyond that, go ahead and butcher them for food, right? So you're just trying to keep a certain amount of breeding stock, and you don't want the population to grow too big, and you want a steady supply of food. Well, that's now built into the game, which is just beautiful. Yeah, if you have more than max, colonists will slaughter the oldest animal, so perfect, exactly what we're looking for. Absolutely brilliant over here. Now, I don't think this is differentiating between like adult animals and child animals. I mean, it will slaughter the oldest one. So, because normally with Colonist Manager, what I would say is I'm looking for, say, 2 adult males, 5 adult females, and I don't put butchering. I ignore the child count, right? So it's just when they come of age, start butchering. So probably I put these numbers higher, right? I might go with something like, I don't know, 2 and 10 or 3 and 10 or something like that, just to keep a bit of a buffer. But it's still going to work brilliantly. Really like it. And you could just set up like auto butchering for the random animals that join you from the event, where, like, I don't know, some rats join your colony. You're like, okay, well, there can only be 1 rat, obviously. Animal sterilization, prevent breeding, can release animals. Yeah, these are the new raid type that was mentioned in the other thing. Facial hair for pawns. So yeah, we got beards. Style of hair is based on the pawn's background, visual wound, and prosthetic overlays on pawns. So one of the things so it doesn't relist it over here, but in the other page, it mentioned that there's a different way to render the pawns. Basically, it's taking all these different visual components for the pawns and internally creating a new image for it, a new bitmap for it. And then it's just rendering that. Instead of what used to happen is it would do each pawn would get multiple render passes, right? It's like, well, first we'll render the body, then the head, then the hair, then the hat, then the this, then the that. So the game used to issue multiple draw commands for each pawn. And so now it's batched together into a single draw command, which is more efficient, but then means you can add more things like this, more visual details to a pawn, which doesn't really add any extra overhead to the graphics layer. So that it works really well together, right? The new optimized system allows us to add things like beard and wounds without impacting performance, which is really cool. And yeah, I showcase this. When multiple pawns are drafted and selected, you can space them out by dragging the right mouse button. Love it. New meal types, vegetarian and carnivore, fine and lavish meals, made exclusively of vegetable meat ingredients. So right now, fine meals, for example, I think they needed some meat and some vegetable, right? And so now it gives you the option of having purely vegetarian versions of fine meals or purely carnivore versions of those things, which gives you more flexibility with your food production. But presumably, I wonder if there are some pawns that are strictly vegetarian or strictly carnivores, for example, and so they will require particular types of meals. Or maybe what we could do is we could have a truly pacifist colony with only vegetarians, for example. Search boxes are good. Visual effects for things, cool, no problem there. So that's the new stuff, then the improvements and adjustments. So yeah, the Goodwill changes are multiplied a little bit more, moving towards the natural, like the neutral Goodwill, right? For like a lot of hostile factions, their natural point is like -80, for example. So it's more likely to move towards the natural point, whatever that is. But it also makes it a little easier for us to fix a relationship with factions that aren't supposed to be our enemies, right? Because their natural point might be 0, and if we did some things to piss them off, so they got neutral, but then if we go and do nice things to them, they will bounce back towards 0 faster than normal. On the other hand, if we were friends with them and then we did something to offend them, then we will lose more like that. So, yeah, that gradually shifts towards the faction's natural goodwill. I mean, I think that was already in there. I don't know. Recent events, yes, there it is. Raiders will no longer actively attack passive colony animals. I'm really, really pleased for this. I wouldn't mind if there were different types of raiders, like if there was a class of raiders where they're just here to just like burn and destroy, and they would still target passive colony animals. That's great. But for the vast majority of them, it just didn't make any sense, like from the point of view of why would they do this, and it may have felt unfairly punishing to the player. Animal tab life stage tooltip now shows the animal's exact age. Cool. Wild spinline spawn during gameplay start at 15% instead of 5%. Oh, that's, I guess, nice. Plants start a little faster. So some of these are like a little tweaked. Plants usually shown by players. I wonder if they used to start at 5% as well. It doesn't say what it used to be. If we get our plant harvest yield stat above 100%, we get a bonus to yield. So I think people with very high harvesting skills could end up over 100, maybe boosted with fertility and various things as well. So we actually get more food than normal. What is this? Improved non-ideal temperature plant inspect spring prevents it from saying not growing if in fact it is growing very slowly. Okay, fine, sure. Oh, and animals won't eat tiny little plants anymore. That's probably helpful. Herbivores don't get hungry as quickly. Adult age is reduced by 33%. Does that mean they count as adults faster? Because this is what I would read this as, right? Whereas it used to take them, I don't know, 12 months to be considered adults. Now they would only take 8 months? Reduced by 30, I don't know, something like that. I don't know. Gestation reduced, yeah, so they make babies faster. So it feels like our herbivore species are going to grow faster and need less food, which I think is going to be nice, because one of the things I think with the pens is they're probably, especially based on the screenshots we're saying, they're going to be a little smaller than some of the grazing areas and things that we would normally set up for our animals. And it was, because it did feel like it was pretty difficult to keep them fed completely. They ate a lot of food. So yeah, they grow faster, they have babies faster, they need a little less food. So it's really going to, so a ranching lifestyle is really going to be much more viable. Reduce toxic fallout buildup. Oh, just for herbivores. Interesting. Because they do have to be outside to graze more. Grass nutrition reduced. Okay, so that's interesting. So they don't get hungry as quickly, but just eating grass isn't going to give them as much. Although I think this is still going to be a net win, just slightly for the grass, but it's really going to benefit us from growing hay, for example. Filth modifiers, sure. Indoor rooms with non-water flooring can have animal filth or trash spread over them. Rain washes away more filth types. Increase meat yield, so butchering's going to be better. Damaged corpses give less meat and leather amounts. Oh. Okay. So we are going to get a lot more meat from butchering perfectly healthy animals, right? Which makes sense. But the damaged ones will be less because either they're missing body parts or, it's always that whole thing like the stress ruins the meat. And it certainly kind of makes sense with the leather as well, right? If something has been hacked up a bunch, well, obviously the leather is going to be not as usable. Animals can be assigned to beds, can be designated as medical. Change Boomalope trainability to none. No longer train Boomalopes. I never did this in any of my videos, but it was definitely something that you could technically do, is you could get a herd of Boomalopes and then just like, when someone would attack you, right, or set up a siege, you just like mark an area there and assign your Boomalopes to that area and they would wander in and then kaboom. Releasing a bonded animal has negative effect on mood, similar to slaughtering. I guess that makes sense, sure. New category to pawn stats, animal productivity. Category contains information pertaining to animal goods. Okay. Traders that sell animals try to generate with at least one pair of core farming animals. Very convenient, because sometimes these traders would show up with animals, but they weren't the kind of things that you were interested in setting up your farm. So now it sounds like it's going to be much more guaranteed that you will be able to find breeding pairs of farming animals to set up your farm. I love that because I love farming. Combat weapons and gear. Challenge mode option for reinforced barrels. These barrels are essential for building and maintaining mortars. But the mortars are more accurate and shells are cheaper to make. Reinforced barrels can be acquired from sieges as quest rewards. Right, because the mortars... No, you can keep the old mortars as well. Classic mortars. Choose either style to play with. Every 20 shots, mortars must have their barrels changed. Mortars forced mischance change from 13 to 10. Forced mischance. So, I guess they are more accurate, but cheaper? Is what they're saying, right? Yeah, more accurate and cheaper. That's good. Mortars is one of those things where, people in comments were always like, why don't you build more mortars? And but I felt like every time I build them, they were just such garbage. Like you'd fire 1,000 mortars and one of them would hit, maybe, and it took so much time between shots. It was useful. In the last game, I did use mortars to relatively good effect. But a lot of times it feels like it's not worth the effort. And I think I didn't even build the mortars. I think I just I claimed them, so I'm like, well, they're here, they're free, we may as well use them. But this will probably incentivize me to use them a lot more. Grenade throws are rendered in arcs, that's a visual change, but very cool. Grenade users are more aware of grenades they've thrown, do not run forward into them. Hooray! War Veil renamed to Veil, okay. Shooting gizmos. When pawn is drafted while eating from inventory, they will return the food to their inventory. Oh, cool. Instead of just dropping on the ground, I guess. And yes, pawns can take medicine to their inventory. Again, this is something that we used to use in a... we used to have a mod that would enable this. Nice to see it in core. Drafted pawns can tend to others in the field. They'll use medicine if they're carrying any. Again, this used to be something from mods we would use, and now it's built into the game. Reduce building killed leavings from 50% to 25%. Reduce deconstruct leavings from 75% to 50%. Doesn't affect very special buildings and mega clusters. So, I guess when things were destroyed or deconstructed, we're going to get less stuff now? Drafted pawns can be ordered to repair buildings. Separate from prioritize. Health tab. Hovering a specific headif provides 2 tooltips. One for the body part, one for the... What are headifs? Okay, let me look at a pawn in-game. So, Nicholas, your health tab. I mean, is it, like... Is it one of these things? Is it one of these things? I don't know. I don't know what that means. Alright, well, that's fine. Pawn growth is proportional to body resource growth speed. Underfed pawns grow more slowly. Sure, fair. Rooms in a row can be considered barracks if all the pawns living in the room are in the same love cluster, meaning they share a spouse or lover with another pawn in the bedroom. Oh, so you might be able to set up some sort of more like poly rooms. Interesting. Pawn passion generation now applies a random offset to how many passions are generated. Older pawns no longer have more passions than younger ones. Okay. Just pawn generation. You know, the little flaming icon next to the skills. So just tweak some of those. Change the wants to sleep with X thought to sleeping alone. Sharing a bed with any lover or spouse will prevent the spot. Okay. So, yeah, that's fine. It'll just say, oh, I'm sleeping alone, but I've got a lover and I want to sleep with them. And so I'm mad that I'm sleeping alone. Okay. Descriptions. Try harder to avoid wearing tattered apparel. Love it. Pawn's gear tab. Equipped utility items are listed under other equipment. Assigning pawns to beds updates the room roll if necessary or if possible. Sure. Drafted pawns can be ordered to carry another dawn pawn. We saw that before. Guests with an all work disabled will no longer opportunistically hull. Fair. Recruit difficulty and resistance refactor. Remove concept of resistance chance for recruitment attempts. Add initial resistance rate. So okay, it used to be for recruiting pawns, it was only ever a percentage chance, and it was fairly low. Then they added a resistance, I don't know, buffer, I can't remember what it's called, but certain amount of like points worth of resistance that you just had to like negotiate through. That would, every time you would, your jailer would talk to them, it would go down by a certain amount, modified by the prisoner's happiness. But then after that was away, there was still a percentage chance. Admittedly, it wasn't as brutally low as it used to be, but sometimes it could still be annoying. So it sounds like they've removed the percentage chance entirely. So now it's just a linear thing that eventually they break. Sure, fine, okay. Pawns with the cannibal trait no longer dislike killing prisoners or harvesting their organs. Because that's right, you needed to have cannibal and, like, psychopath, maybe? I think you needed sort of 2 traits to have, like, the perfect person to not mind butchering human beings. They get a mood buff from wearing human leather apparel, an opinion boost from other cannibals while wearing human leather apparel. Yeah, alright, so you can go full RimWorld meme. Because it was always the RimWorld meme of, like, you know, you'd get prisoners, it's like, oh good, we've got some new hats, right? That's the meme, that you'd kill these humans, use the human leather to make hats. But in practice, that wasn't really truly a strong or viable gameplay thing, because you would get tons of debuffs from actually, you know, killing people, butchering human corpses would give debuffs, etc., etc., etc. So now that's no longer a thing. I think the cannibals didn't mind butchering corpses, but they didn't like the actual, like, killing prisoners was still considered bad, and then, yeah, or intentionally harvesting their organs, right? Removing a prisoner's lungs, for example, would still give them debuffs. Now the cannibals don't give a toss at all. Non-cannibals dislike those that wear human leather apparel. Love it. Yep. Bloodlust, harvest an organ, receive a bloodlust organ harvest +4 mood boost. Sure, fair. Pawns in aggro mental state no longer just start panic fleeing when their group is dying off in combat. Undergrounders have need indoors, increased spending towards indoors. So this is a trait that pawns can have where they really want to be underground. Smooth out addiction chances, okay. Prisoners' escape chances multiplied by the number of exits the prison has, okay. Escape from prisoners will attack enemies with weapons they pick up, including orbital bombardment targeters. That sounds bad. Okay. Optimized caravan, automatic food selection, groovy, caravan speed solely depends on carried mass, animals, terrain movement difficulty. Pawn speed no longer impacts caravan speed. Some animals can be ridden. Down pawns do not slow caravans down, but you need at least one. Yeah, okay. Refactored incident selection. The system first selects whether or not to increase colony population, then finds an incident matching selection. All right. Quest, room fog. When the door is 50% open, sure. Feedback. I'm just going to go through this because I don't think these are going to be huge, notable changes the same way. Love to see the word optimized, though, whenever we get to see it. Tweaks to royalty. We'll just skip through some of that. A bunch of bug fixes, and a bunch of these bug fixes might be bugs in 1.3, right? As this updates, you play up 1.3 for a while, and then, a few hours later, a new bug fix for something that wasn't 1.3 might show up. Overall, I'm very excited for 1.3. I'm very excited for ideology, which we don't have as much information about yet. I think it's going to be fantastic. I've actually been prepping for a new RimWorld Let's Play. I had like a whole setup and everything all set up. I'd set it up. Well, originally, like it was... I've been working on it for a couple of weeks now, just trying to find a good time slot to put in, but I knew the story I wanted to go for, and now I'm like, well, maybe I'll throw that all out the window with 1.3. Well, I might still go with the story that I was thinking of, but I'm clearly going to have to... It was going to be a heavily modded game. With 1.3 testing, we're definitely going to go with no mods because a lot of them just aren't updated or will break, especially as 1.3 gets updates throughout. So I'm going to have to make a decision whether I go for a very heavily modded 1.2 game or if we go vanilla 1.3. And I suspect we'll probably end up going 1.3. So hopefully there'll be some of that soon. Folks, thanks a lot for watching, and I hope you're as excited about RimWorld as I am. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.